Star Trek Picard now streaming on CBS All Access, and all the in-development Star Trek feature films having imploded, the focus for Star Trek has now shifted from movies to television. Following the remerger of Viacom and CBS, new rumors have, which not only throw shade at the future of Star Trek on film, but on the present and future of Star Trek on TV as well. In this video, we will first go through a brief timeline of events surrounding the current Star Trek, before going through the latest rumors about what happened behind the scenes of Noah Hawley's Star Trek 4. And finally, the rumors that Star Trek might be sold wholesale to Universal and Seth MacFarlane. Midnight's Edge has covered the topic of the Star Trek rights split in great detail in previous videos. For more information, please check them out in the Star Trek playlist, which is linked in the description. The short version of which is that in 1999, Viacom, who owned Paramount and Star Trek, bought CBS Television. The rights were divided between the television properties, which went to CBS, and the film side, which went to Paramount. When the corporate split happened in 2005, CBS became the ultimate owner of the Star Trek IP, while Paramount retained the rights to the movies they had produced. CBS, having no interest in producing Star Trek, created an alternate license for Paramount to produce new Star Trek, which, not to put too fine a point on it, had to be about 25% different than the original Star Trek for merchandising and licensing purposes. Paramount brought in J.J.Abrams and Bad Robot, and in 2009, the new Star Trek was born. While Abrams and Bad Robot were producing new movies, CBS still owned the merchandising rights to the original Star Trek IP. Abrams asked CBS to essentially vault all existing Star Trek, including merchandise, so as not to confuse the audience with two different versions of the property. CBS, who still made quite a bit of money off of Star Trek merchandise annually, told him to get lost. The continued infighting and brand confusion between two distinct iterations of Star Trek prompted Abrams to jump ship to Disney and Star Wars. After two initially successful movies, Star Trek Beyond bombed at the box office. However, the week before it did, a fourth movie was announced. Securing funding for it in the aftermath of Beyond bombing, however, would prove to be an insurmountable obstacle. Much later, director S.J. Clarkson, best known for the BBC series Life on Mars, was hired to direct, as a way to spur investor interest in Star Trek 4. The news of a fourth film touting the return of Chris Hemsworth, now a bona fide star thanks to the MCU, as George Kirk in a movie that supposedly would have him and Chris Pine's James T. Kirk meet through a plot involving time travel. In August of 2018, contract negotiations with the stars had broken down, with Pine and Hemsworth allegedly refusing to take a pay cut for a fourth film. Despite planted news stories claiming that Paramount could continue the series without Pine and Hemsworth, director Clarkson left the project, and that incarnation of Star Trek 4 was eventually scrapped. In November of 2019, Fargo writer and author Noah Hawley had been tapped to write and direct a fourth Star Trek movie for production company Bad Robot. Hawley said, "Star Trek is about exploration and humanity at its best, and diversity and creative problem solving. I don't necessarily find action in and of itself interesting unless it's story." In addition to Star Trek 4, director Quentin Tarantino had done some preliminary work with Bad Robot about making an R-rated Star Trek film, the basis of which would be derived from the TNG episode Yesterday's Enterprise. By December of 2019, it was reported that Quentin Tarantino was backing away from making a Star Trek movie, and by January, it was reported that the project had all but stalled completely. It wasn't the only one. On January 2nd of 2020, rumors began circulating that Hawley's Star Trek film might have stalled as well. According to Bounding Into Comics, their sources claimed investors had pulled out of the project, which was in line with what we had heard. Of course, they could start over with a different and less expensive cast, which is exactly what they did. On January 9th, 2020, The Hollywood Reporter contradicted this report, claiming that Hawley's Star Trek was still in development, and it may feature a new cast. Hawley said to THR's TV Top 5 podcast, "To call it Star Trek 4 is kind of a misnomer. I have my own take on the franchise as a lifelong fan." When asked if the film could include a new cast, he said, "Yeah, I think so, yeah." Comments prompting speculation that the new film could be yet another reboot. So, what is the current status of Star Trek on film? New information has come to us from 4chan and Twitter user Angry Mr. Flibble on the status of Star Trek 4, Noah Hawley's script, and Quentin Tarantino's Star Trek. As usual, we must stress that the following information cannot be independently verified and must be treated as rumor. As such, it must be taken with a grain of salt. With the mandatory health warning out of the way, let's dive into what we've learned. According to an anonymous 4chan user, Noah Hawley's script for Star Trek was rejected by Paramount. The reason for which was it was deemed too Trekky. Paramount allegedly were angry that it too closely resembled another science fiction property, the Orville. Paramount believes that the Orville is in their minds an inferior product, which is still cutting into their market share. Hawley apparently sought the help of old-school Star Trek fans at CBS and Paramount when putting his pitch together, which contained concepts and art. When the pitch was rejected, everyone was said to become very angry, and a mass walkout may very well ensue. The script was said not to be set in the Bad Robot timeline, but in the traditional, canonical timeline from 1966 to 2005, and featured mostly a new cast. Hawley, feeling that this exercise has been a waste of time since he would not be allowed to make the movie he wants to direct, has walked away from the project. According to the anonymous source, there is no plan B currently for Star Trek on film, and as well, Quentin Tarantino's film is dead and buried and will not be happening. The alleged rejection of Noah Hawley's script for being too Trekky and set in the canonical timeline could, at first glance, seem to indicate that Paramount may want to preserve their connection with Bad Robot and their alternate Star Trek license. There is, however, more to this story. With Viacom and CBS now having remerged into Viacom CBS, Paramount has no further need for an alternate Star Trek license with the mandated 25% difference. So how could it being too Trekky be an issue? Here we are not privy to the details, but one likely explanation goes right back to the licensing issue. To paraphrase another famous genre property, there can be only one. So long as Picard or any other incarnation of Star Trek made under the alternate license continues on television, the classic canonical version of Star Trek cannot return, not even on the big screen. This has nothing to do with in-continuity timelines. Instead, it is all about very real legal entanglement and licensing issues. Bad Robot and Secret Hideout can claim that their versions of Star Trek are set in whatever timeline they want. They can say Picard is set in the Prime timeline, just like they did Star Trek Discovery, which many will assume means the original canon, although both the Kelvin timeline and the Prime timeline are constructs of the alternate designs. Of far greater importance is which license is in play, and that is determined by the aesthetics and tone. If you're confused, don't be ashamed. You're not the only one. In July of 2019, director Quentin Tarantino also expressed his confusion regarding the alternate Star Trek timeline. Director J.J.Abrams had an unusual way of clarifying it for him.
Is it in the current timeline? Is it? You're a fan of the original series, I know.
Yeah.
So what is it?
Yeah, it's like it would deal with the Chris Pine timeline. Now, I still don't quite understand, and JJ can't explain it to me. Whatever, and my editor has tried to explain it to me, and I still don't get it. All right, Fred Raskin, about something happened in the first movie that now kind of wiped the slate clean.
Right.
I don't buy that. I don't like it. I don't appreciate it. I don't. Fuck that. All right, I don't like that. You know.
I'm gonna lead you down a road. You want the Guardian of Forever to have happened, don't you?
Yeah, I want the whole series to have happened. All right, it just hasn't happened yet.
Yes.
And no, Benedict Cumberbatch or whatever his name is. All right, it's not Khan.
Yeah.
All right, Khan is Khan. And I told JJ, I don't understand this. I don't like it. And then he's like, ignore it. Nobody likes it. I don't understand it. Just do whatever you want. If you want it to happen the exact way it happened on the series, it can.
So that's more in line with what you're honoring the series that you loved and came up with.
Yes, exactly.
Clearly, Bad Robot aren't bound by any timelines. It's all about the alternate license, and that may have been an ulterior motive for Paramount to reject any new Star Trek movie from Bad Robot, no matter what it is about or who directs it. According to information that has reached us, the deal with Bad Robot has already expired. Paramount doesn't owe them any more Star Trek movies. However, if they were to make one right now, it would have to include Bad Robot, and it would have to be made under the alternate license. This goes back to what we said about there can be only one. If there were to be a fourth movie, so long as any other Star Trek is being produced under the alternate license, such as Picard or Discovery, even if they are on TV, that movie would have to be made under the alternate license, and the deal with Bad Robot would be back on and in effect for years to come. From what we've been told, Viacom CBS no longer wants anything to do with them, so pretty much anything they pitch, no matter how publicly they do it, will be rejected. Before any new Star Trek can be made under the original canon, all of Secret Hideout's alternate Star Trek would have to be cancelled. Most likely, it would place a moratorium on Star Trek that would last years before any Star Trek could be made in the canonical timeline. The contracts are that complex and that binding. This then leads to the rumors of Seth MacFarlane buying Star Trek. We have to reiterate that according to the information we have heard from a source with ties to Seth MacFarlane himself, there is no truth to these rumors. Yet, they keep on persisting, so we will keep you up to date on them and let you make up your own mind. To be clear, it is not a matter of Seth MacFarlane himself buying Star Trek, but Universal buying Star Trek and placing him in charge of it. According to unverified rumors on 4chan, talks are already underway, and Seth MacFarlane already has plans in motion as he believes Trek will be his to command by 2022. According to the unverified rumors, these include canceling everything Kurtzman has put into motion except Picard and Prodigy, and instead bring back Scott Bakula for a limited series. The rumors go on to say that if this would come to pass, the Orville wouldn't be canceled, but he would step back from it. You may recall that Seth MacFarlane actually had guest appearances in Star Trek Enterprise, so it stands to reason that he may have a soft spot for that series. He also has direct access to all of the original cast, and he has reportedly spoken to several of them about future movie and series appearances. Could this happen? For more than a year, we have heard that due to the contractual mess, the easiest way forward may be to pay everyone off, collect enough cash to make up for years' worth of lost licensing sales, with licensing being just about the only side of Star Trek that is successful, and then let someone else take over with a clean slate. Again, we are not saying we have heard that this is what they are doing, but that the option has been talked about and is on the table. The wild card in all of this is Sherry Redstone. After a very public battle behind the scenes with former CBS CEO Les Moonves, Redstone is now in sole control of the newly remerged Viacom CBS. New Viacom CBS CEO Bob Bakish was Redstone's choice to lead the company. With the departure of interim CBS CEO Joseph Ianniello and with his replacement, former NBC Universal executive George Cheeks, it marks the last remnant of the Les Moonves regime to be swept away. Under Sherry Redstone and the previous Viacom stewardship, Star Trek had some of its most profitable years in its 50-plus year history. It remains to be seen if Redstone, Bakish, Cheeks, and the new Viacom CBS can restore Star Trek to not only profitability on film, but also to its standing as one of the premier science fiction franchises with fans, or if they decide to hell with it and sell it off. Let us know your thoughts on all of this in the comments.